So soils is really worth paying attention to. So climate is fairly easy to figure out. I mean, it doesn't stop people from planting redwoods in the Central Valley or even redwoods in Bolinas, but soils isn't so obvious. It really helps to look at the plants that are growing at the site where you want them to grow. Tree roots, because this is sort of one of the hardest parts to get straight on trees, because it's the part we really can't see. So there's this idea out there that tree, and I pulled this right off the internet, here it is. The top mimics the bottom mimics the top, right? And while there are some trees that this is almost true for, the thing that really determines the growth of a tree's root form is the environment at which it grows, the soils in which it grows. We look at a very deep soil in Russia that was done shortly after the revolution. There were a bunch of scientists that found they had a lot of time on their hands. And they didn't want to do anything too controversial, so this guy decided he was going to map every root in apple trees. And the apple trees were very carefully pruned, as you can see, but he mapped every one of them, and they just go wherever it is. Now, this is a deep soil. This has got like 10 feet of topsoil, and you can see the roots taking up a lot of that. But they're avoiding other apples, and they're avoiding the road, but they're going sort of the apricot and the cherry, a little bit of resource allocation happening there. Where the apricot and the cherry may be taking up certain nutrients at different times of the year so they can get along. The apple, not so much. So when we're planting, how do we use this information to help us? Well, the first is that a deep hole is a grave. You're digging the tree's grave if you dig it a nice deep hole. And I'm amazed at how many times people ignore me, including my own dentist. He's like, you told me to dig a shallow hole, but I dug a deep one. It's better. It's like, not really. Putting the tree into the ground. When you dig the hole needs to be wide. Several times as wide as the container or root ball you're working with, and not quite as deep as the container or root ball that you're working with. Or maybe just as deep. It depends upon exactly what you're going for here. You might consider planting slightly high. This is ideal for a place that has drainage issues, where that root ball is really critical for oxygen exchange. And if that gets flooded, the tree basically suffocates. Now, there are some trees that can do better or worse with that. Willows and swamp cypresses are adapted to that kind of thing. But most of our oaks, and you limit yourself to a very narrow plant palette if you're looking at trees that can tolerate long-term flooding. So you're going to want to remove the nursery stake. It's not even illustrated here. It's what the green tree is strapped to a lot of times when you get it from the nursery. And you want to backfill only with native soil to grade. And then you cover it with mulch, but you don't pile the mulch up very high. You don't put in about more than 2 to 4 inches of it. I'm getting ahead of myself. You water the tree in when you get the native soil back in here. That encourages the roots, gets it in, so you don't have to water a lot on top of all this other stuff. And this is because they're just like any other critter. In the nursery, they were grown cheek by jowl, and they never got much sun on their trunks. So they're pasty and white. And you're going to stick them out in the sun and let them burn there all day long. They will burn, and they will kill the cambium on half of the trunk. So if you paint them white, it doesn't look great, but it's a good way to get the tree through its first couple of years. That interior latex paint flakes off after a while. You won't even notice it after a few years. Planting trees is really sexy. Picking out the trees, digging holes, it's easy to get everybody behind. You know what I mean? Taking care of a tree by just going out and visiting it once a month or even once a week, that's not so sexy. Everybody gets busy and they forget about it. And you can talk to these guys over at the city. They'll tell you all about it too. They got a lot of money for maintenance. And that is where a lot of tree plantings fall down. If you're looking for a legacy, you've got to be able to budget in or manage in somehow going out and visiting that tree and making sure that it has water and the things it needs, that the mulch gets filled around the base, has everything.